He grew up in the same city as João Gilberto. So they grew up together. They were kids, friends. And then João left for Salvador, for the capital, in Bahia. My dad followed him. He called for my dad. And then when João left for Rio, he called my dad. And my dad lands in Rio, stays in the same boarding house with João. And then João says, we have a recording today. And it was the first recording of the song Chega de Saudade. João had done a recording of it, but it never came out, and it was the recording of Elisete Cardoso singing it, with my dad, João Gilberto, and Jobim singing background on that.
Hi, everybody. This episode is a conversation with Luciana Souza, Grammy Award winner, Brazilian singer, and band leader, and I just think the world of her, and I hope you enjoy the conversation that we had together. Hello, Luciana.
Hi,
I'm here
John.
with Luciana Souza. Thank you for the time. Thanks for being here to share with me and with everyone that's listening.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I want to just kind of dive in. Everybody knows your work and that you're an amazing musician, and composer and artist, band leader, mother, human being, all of these things that we navigate together.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the first time that I went to Brazil, and it was in Rio, though. And I remember the folks that I was with, we went to go have some lunch, and it was on the beach, this restaurant. And we passed a couple people that had just started a little drum circle. And there was somebody that had like a shake, I can't remember now, some sort of shaker thing,
right,
and some hand drums. And then we walked back maybe 2 hours later, because everything, if it was in LA, it would take 20 minutes, but there
right.
it took,
longer,
which was wonderful. It's like time just slows down and is appreciated. When we came back, there were maybe 25 people around this groove.
Yeah.
This, couldn't label what kind of samba it was, but it was the most incredible thing, or at least one of the most incredible feeling moments that I'll always remember for the rest of my life. And so much joy and so much community inside of that. And I think I'm always looking for that when I play music.
Yeah.
And so what I want to hand over to you is, please tell us about your experience bathing in that culture, in that music, and your family and your godfather,
sure.
and this hug that you received by the place that you were born in Brazil.
Yeah. It's such a... Well, it's lovely to hear your story. I think it happens to a lot of people who go to Brazil, and that's what they fall in love with, is this warmth and openness, this idea that you can be anywhere and music is there. Music is present. We say that music for Brazilians is a birthright, and I actually tell students that, it's your music, it's your culture. Take it. And make it a part of your daily life. Brazilians sing, they break into samba. Everything in Brazil acaba no samba, ends on a samba, right? And because it's easy, it's binary, it's part of your body. You're walking, you're dancing already. So that's a gift, and that's given to us. And for me, I didn't grow up in Rio. I went to Rio quite a bit. My mom was born in Rio and raised in Rio, but we lived in São Paulo, which was a much more bruta city. It's a stronger city, much more urban than Rio. Doesn't have the beauty of Rio, nature that comes through the ocean and the mountains and the green, the Mata Atlântica, the forest. Is not. São Paulo is very urban and very much built, but it's got a strength, and it's got its own version of samba. But I grew up in a family of musicians, and that was really how lucky I feel. That my parents were musicians and not bankers or, something else. As challenging as that was sometimes, because it was somewhat chaotic. We were 5 children in a small house. First in a very small apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment. and then in a small house.
I didn't realize the family was that large.
Yeah, so much larger. My parents had relationships before, but this family, this nucleus was 5, and I'm the youngest of 5. And my mother says that literally, John, a child would be born, they would take a drawer from the dresser, put a pillow on it, and put the baby in there. There were no cribs or, no structure really, but life was there and it was present, and I guess they were making babies and loving each other, and that I love knowing that about them, that they were, together and intimate with each other. Yeah. And also making music together. They were musical partners. My mother wrote poetry. My father wrote the music. My dad was self-taught, had very little education, formal education, not only in music, but in anything. He really didn't go to school very much. So I come from that sort of very simple, and I don't want to call it primitive, I just want to call it simple, rooted in experience, in life, and not in school. And my mom was more of an intellectual, somebody who had gone to school and was a reader, avid reader, really, and somebody who was a brain. And my dad was more about feeling and playing guitar. And he grew up in the same city as João Gilberto. So they grew up together. They were kids, friends. And then João left for Salvador, for the capital, in Bahia. My dad followed him. He called for my dad. And then when João left for Rio, he called my dad. And my dad lands in Rio, stays in the same boarding house with João. And then João says, we have a recording today. And it was the first recording of the song Chega de Saudade. João had done a recording of it, but it never came out, and it was the recording of Elisete Cardoso singing it, with my dad, João Gilberto, and Jobim singing background on that. So I feel blessed that was the blood, the blood that I came from. But also our household was just a center of people coming through, because there was always food, because there were 5 kids. So there was always lunch and dinner.
I see.
And these moments really offered a place. It was a place for people to come, drop instruments on their way somewhere else. So there was always a bunch of bags of stuff, and we could always go to it. And as long as we didn't break anything, we could always touch things. And there was always somebody was moving, had an extra piano. We would come into the garage or the front of the house. And there were always a lot of musicians coming through, because my parents welcomed these people. These were their friends. You have to remember also, I was born in 1966, and we had a military coup in Brazil in 1964. So our house was also a safe place for people to come through. People were leaving stuff there, documents and papers and books and things. And my mother was very, until the moment she died, very political, very liberal, very left person in a country that had a dictatorship that lasted 21 years. So she saw friends be put in jail. She was herself gone for 3 days, detained, as they call it, and they sent her back because she was still, taking care of him. I was just about to be born. Adriana, my sister, was a baby when she was taken and disappeared for 3 days, and came back with wounds and marks and things. And it was just a very scary time, but they made a household that was joyous, and I don't know how they did that. They were broke, but they were happy, and the only explanation that I have for it is that they were doing what they loved, which was music. And so that really fed their spirit, and it fed us in a way that I'm just so grateful for. It wasn't about possessions, it wasn't about having, it was about being. And the communal experience that you had in Rio is what we had at home all the time. My godfather, as you know, is Hermeto Pascoal, and he would come through São Paulo. He lived in São Paulo. Then he moved to the States in 1969, 70. He moved to the United States and to New York. And but every time he was in São Paulo, he would stay with us at the house. And I don't remember the day I wasn't baptized, so there was not a day that he became my godfather. He was just, I guess, at home when I was born, so he became my godfather. My sister Carla, her godfather is Milton Nascimento, and it just happens because this was, it's like you now with your family. Your peers are the people making this music. Sure. And so it felt very natural. It wasn't like, oh, that's so-and-so. It's just, it was what it was. And the food was the connector, and the music was the connector.
Sure. You know what I'm thinking about, too? You're the youngest, so you were the baby. So I can imagine these, the people coming in, the musicians coming in, they must have just loved you and really encouraged you trying out the musical instruments and encouraging dancing and just, really giving you a lot of love through music and art.
And I remember playing these games with Hermeto. He would come. I thought they were games. Like they were like it was like playing ball. He would sit at the piano and play a line. Pe puro bado, And I'd go, and he would look at me, and I'd go, pe, purubada, purubadadadero, purubadadadero, and I'd just follow him. And just, those were ear training games for me, but I didn't know that was it. I just thought it was the most fun thing you could do with that guy who looked so funny, who was an albino man, who was short and smelled so good. He always smelled really good, like not a cologne thing, just maybe soap, but clean and lovely and fresh. And, he could barely see, but he looked like a Santa Claus every day, like a mini Santa Claus thing. But he was fun, and he had a huge family. He had so many more kids than we did. And when they lived in São Paulo, we would see our families together, and it was just like a soccer team already. Like 2 families together, you already have 11 kids, He had 6 kids. And they were all fun, and our ages sort of were connected. Like maybe some of them were a little older, and in between our ages, and just music was just flowing through. And he is just a really, I don't know if everyone's familiar with him, but if you're not, go check him out. A very special human, almost an alien human, like someone that you can't believe he's from here, because he's so open-minded and so music everywhere. Like just eager to make it and to share it with you. And that taught me a lot about the possibility in music, and it took some of that fear that singers live with, about, am I going to be able to do this? Can I do this? Do I know this? Because singing is, sometimes we don't let all of it flow through us, but he lets it flow through him. And that's always a great reminder for me about letting it happen, allowing it.
When I said you were a musician's musician, that's really true, because all musicians want to work with you because you are very attuned to the instrumental side of music, and you've obviously spent the time to develop the understanding and the execution of that part of the craft.
Still spending, but yeah.
Of course. I mean, all of us. Yeah. And then also, you also, with the words, you also are very attuned to the storytelling as well. So I think it's a rare combination, where a musician can really dip into both sides equally as deep, as balanced.
I certainly was. And I mean, for the longest time, especially when I came to the States, I think I was really into poetry as a younger person. But then when I came to America, I really wanted to just be a cat, be like a musician, be like a cat, like the cats, And I didn't appreciate the words as much, or words or poetry as much. For several years, it was a struggle for me. I sang the words, but it was like almost a chore. I really wanted to just get to the note. And didn't pay attention. And then I was glad that there was a rebirth at some point that really sort of reminded me, and there's that. Yeah. And now I try to live in the crossroads of both, and just, let whichever one wants to dominate for a minute. I'm not struggling with it anymore. But I felt that words were an impediment to becoming. Like I wanted to just get it. And so all I wanted to do was wordless music. And I still love it. And finding the story and the melody and the rhythm, as opposed to having to have lyrics to say it.
It illuminates for me the importance of the community that you're in, right? Because it's like it's this entrainment, for better or for worse, that you really take on the values and intentions of a community. Right. And sometimes that's great to tell you exactly what you don't want to do. You have to explore it and see the mirror and say, okay, that's definitely what I don't want to do, even if you appreciate it with all your heart. Right. Or, this is something I'm going to take with me for the rest of my, musical career or artistry. Right. Yeah. Huh. It's both of those together. Absolutely. Going back, I'm just curious, was in that circle of friends and musicians, was Dorival Caymmi Sr. part of that?
Not, because he was at that point living in Salvador. So we were down south in São Paulo. So the distance, Brazil is a big country. And so to drive from São Paulo to Salvador will take you a couple of days, right? So he wasn't, but he was closer to my dad, and my dad had a lot of contact with him earlier on. But then he moved to Rio for a while, but then we were... Yeah,
I thought he was in Rio, but he was in Salvador.
So he was still spending time in Salvador and in Rio. But his home, really, the Casa dos Caymmi, was really in Salvador until Dorival moved to Rio much later. But the kids were in Rio. Dori, until he came here, was in Rio. Danilo is still in Rio, and Nana is still in Rio.
I see.
Yeah. And what a dynasty, right? Those guys.
Oh my goodness. I had the chance to play with Dori Jr. in LA a couple times, and I was just peppering him with questions to just get a feeling for what that community was like.
Yeah. And I think for them, when I taught a couple of years ago a class on Jobim for MIT, a seminar, a 6-hour seminar that was on Zoom because of the pandemic. But I had to really do some research on Jobim. It was a joy for me to do that, to learn about his life. And one of his big influences was Pixinguinha, the chorinho guy.
Yeah.
And then Caymmi was a huge influence, right? In terms of not in terms of the structure of the music, but in terms of some harmonic things, but the joy and the celebration of the place, right? Because Caymmi wrote about the place that he knew, which was Salvador, and he wrote about looking out the window in the house or being at the beach and waiting for the fishermen to come.
Yeah.
And he wrote about the place and also about love, but specifically women. So Jobim has all these songs. Dorival Caymmi does too. All these songs dedicated to all these women. That it wasn't a real romance. Like, it wasn't something that was that happened, but just looking at someone and being curious about who they are. So Jobim has Luciana, Ana Maria, Luisa, Angela. Those were women that he didn't marry, he didn't have a relationship with, but whether they existed or not, the fascination that humans bring, in for them, the female, right? Yeah. And so Jobim talked about Dorival so much, and he had such a reverence for him. And also for his big singing, because Dorival Caymmi was a big singer. He came from a time when there were no microphones. You had to sing on top of the instrument, above the instruments, and have your voice run through, right, come through. And so he had this beautiful vibrato, and it was very sort of pompous voice, this big voice. And then come Bossa Nova and changes everything, right? Where João is just very close to the mic and almost whispering, right? That was, but Dorival is, I just recorded 2 of his pieces. And we did one together when we played. We did Você Já Foi à Bahia. And I love the joy in his music. And this, I want to say simplicity, but I'm not diminishing anything. There's a directness in his music, in his melodic material, use of repetition, use of, triads in a way that's just so rich. Possibilities are there, right? We sometimes in jazz, and you may not like what I'm going to say, but or maybe you will. Sometimes in jazz we fill in all the space, and we don't leave room for imagination even, or for the listener to come in with their ideas also, right? Because listening to music also should be a responsibility for the listener to come in and engage. And you can be passive about it, but also you can be imaginative about it. And sometimes I find myself doing this in jazz, like being for the sake of whatever, being hip or being modern or being complete, right? We fill in all the space and don't leave room for some of the other stuff that is possible.
Well, I'm smiling because you're leading right into something I wanted to ask you, kind of an observation that I had with you. And by the way, yes. I think I talk about that and think about that and feel that.
I know that from
moment.
your playing, yeah, from your writing and your playing, yeah.
Even in conversation, I play with this all the time in a very mischievous way, in conversation with people, and I purposely will leave silence to see how uncomfortable they feel, happens, especially, this particular culture. Yeah. You can say, "How are you?" And then
yeah.
Or even that idea of, if you really want something to feel impactful, you can say, "Listen, the meaning of life is that there's no meaning." And then I could continue on and say, and then later on I need to go to the grocery store, and then it doesn't have time to actually travel into and make an impact. Yeah. But if you say the meaning of life is a Schlügelbach,
yeah,
then there's at least a chance for it to hit.
Right.
But what I wanted to...
Yeah, exactly. I get it, yes.
No, and you, I know you do, and this is another side comment, but with you, I really feel like you're some sort of sister for me because
And I feel the same, yeah.
we don't know each other hardly at all,
Right.
yet I
But
feel
there's
very comfortable.
I know, same.
And when we played even more, because in the music, it just, the capacity goes,
Yeah.
it's limitless.
Yeah.
So I've seen you give a few lectures now and a few master classes, and just seen you as an educator. And one of the things that I observed is how you have a deep capacity to listen to the students that are in front of you. You're sensing everything behind you, around you, on top of you, like you're sensing the whole room. But also your comments about what you're presenting, may it be just listening to a piece of music, is you're hearing things in a way that I think most people are not hearing. And you're able to present it in a way that they can actually go and then find it for themselves. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you, John.
Of course.
I've had great teachers.
Tell me.
But I think the greatest thing was the listening. The greatest language is communicated through listening. Like the first thing we do is listen to the womb inside, right? We can't make a sound yet, and yet we're listening to the sounds that are outside, right? Listening is the first, engaged activity that we do. And that's how we communicate language. That's how we learn language. That's how we absorb language. So for me, listening is primordial. It's the only thing that means anything in music, really. I know right now you're making me talk a lot, but it's my favorite thing to do is to listen. It really is. And listen to music, listen to stories, listen to people, listen to movies, be in the movie, but seeing, but also listening, taking the sounds of the movie, the steps when somebody's walking. I mean, that calls my attention sometimes more than the action, the visual thing that's happening. And that is a skill that was taught to me by Hermeto, by the games, by my parents, by living in a place that was chaotic, and you're... The moment you have respite in Brazil is when you're quiet, and if you can find nature, and nature is abundant, and it's completely connected to your less and less, of course, because we're living in urban places and destroying nature, but it's so present in Brazil. And it was. My parents made sure when we were growing up that we would spend at least a month and a half, 2 months away from the city, in a place called Mato Grosso. Wow. They would just stop everything, and we would all go with friends and family and other people with us. And we go to a place that had no electricity, and it had a river, the convergence of two rivers in front of this rancho, this ranch, that my father bought with whatever money he made. That was the first thing he bought. Before he bought a house for us to live, we were still paying rent in São Paulo. He bought this place somewhere else because he came from that. He came from a place that had no vehicles. They had to walk or take a donkey, not even a caballo, not even a horse, They had to walk to go places. And so he wanted us to have that experience. So it wasn't all the time, but once a year, we would go for an extended period, like 5, 6, 7 weeks sometimes, and spend time in Mato Grosso. And that was incredibly formative for me. The fact that we could hear nature. Yeah. And be in silence and hear the wind. And I know it sounds so, she heard the wind growing up, but it's deep. I know because I know it's, but even today when I was walking here or coming here, the wind today was beautiful. Yeah. And being able to have this kind of reverence for nature helps you in music. Because what's happening to us is this natural phenomenon that I'm speaking, and you're getting some feeling from me, and you are inhaling my ideas, my sounds, processing it. So this exchange is the deepest thing, and it happens in nature all the time. It's happening right now outside. Yeah. The earth is perspiring, clouds are forming, it's raining again. It's constantly in cycles that we don't control. And so the listening part of it is really important. So if I can, you said I was attuned to the students. I'm trying to listen to their bodies, listen to their energy. Am I losing somebody here? And make it, like yesterday, I taught a very short thing on songwriting. We did so much in however many minutes we had, because I was, I was trying to focus on each one. And if this person was talking too much, I was trying to, but it's like jazz. It's this thing. If somebody's too busy and too much, Don't do it. You don't do it. And that silence that you said you bring to the conversation will force the other person to go, oh, I'm not listening anymore. I'm just listening to myself, right? But I had great teachers, from my dad to Hermeto to the teachers that I had in school. I went to Berkeley and NEC, and I somehow I was the lucky person who caught the great teachers. Sometimes it happens that way. You go to a school when it's also seasonal, right? The group of students that comes, there's a good, like wine or cheese or something. There's a convergence of good things. Yeah. And I was at Berkeley in the 80s before it changed very much into much more commercial music. There were still a bunch of big bands and, Thad Jones, Mel Lewis big band, repertoire bands, they would play music. And the great Herb Pomeroy, there were great people there. Hal Crook, the great trombonist. I mean, those cats were still teaching there. And I'm not saying that those guys are not there now. I'm just saying that I was lucky that I got to drink from those people, what they were saying, and that they walked in the classroom and they had the thing that you talked about when I first walked in the room today. They had soul confidence. They knew what their purpose was in life, and they knew they were perennial students, and they were discovering this thing and sharing this love for this music with everyone who walked in. They were messengers, and they were not holding on to this thing because no one can hold on to it. They didn't have any ownership. They were simply passing this message and exchanging it and listening and sharing. And so I learned from those guys. And I say guys because there were very few, and still to this day, few women teaching. But they were generous, they were wonderful. And so I consider, again, myself extremely blessed because I've had a chance to study with these guys. And they taught me about music, but also about how to be in the classroom, how to integrate everybody, how to not leave anybody behind, and how to be positive with students. I find that a lot of the teaching, and you and I could talk about this forever, a lot of teaching happens in a space of negativity. And that doesn't, as we were talking about words, that doesn't promote anything good. I was teaching the students yesterday. I was in another master class teaching about the panini technique that I learned, right? For everything that you have to say that needs growth, sandwich it with two really good positive things. And you don't have to make them up. You just have to listen and pay attention. There's always good things. Wow, you've improved your posture. I love the way you're holding or, your notes or so, your tone or your breath or the position or your embouchure, or you feel so much more relaxed, or your understanding of the lyric. There's always something. You just have to go in with the spirit, with this, what am I going to find here? And not looking for it, but just allowing yourself to receive that. And the students, immediately they feel good and they grow because the earth is fertile. And it's just, you're just pouring a little water and saying, grow, So that's important to me, this kind of listening, the listening of the soul almost. And I know, that, again, that sounds so tacky, but or pretentious in a way. I hope it doesn't, but you know what I mean? I'm listening to your soul, but I'm listening to your being. Yeah. You're not just singing, you are here.
It's multidimensional.
Yeah.
It reminded me of many years ago when I was teaching at Cal State Northridge in LA. We had John Clayton come in and work with the band. Talk about a man with positivity. Oh, but he immediately made the band sound just so much more mature, and like everything was digging in. And they played a passage, and he stopped the band and he said, I just had to stop you all because it sounded so good. Okay, one. I was like, wow, so great. That's amazing. Yeah. He said, usually people stop the band because there's something wrong. I just wanted to stop the band to tell you all that it feels so good.
And imagine those souls, they leave that room that day, right? It's not because it's we, right? So the collective gets honored, right? And because of you, I sound better. And because of me, you see, and this exchange, and everybody grows. And the next day they go into another room and they share that as opposed to,
It fuels the main purpose.
Absolutely.
And so I would ask you now, soul confidence. What do you feel at this point in your life? What is that mission? What are you here to, like, not even, I know you well enough to know that you're here to serve. Yeah. But what do you, even for yourself, if you can think in this reciprocal way, what are you here to experience in this life, in this moment?
Yeah, I think to be able to open myself, crack it really, to not hold, to reveal, to unleash, to share, and to touch. I mean, that exchange for me is really important.
Tell me about that evolution then, from
fear.
From when you first started, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of, as I said, freedom and joy and chaos. But I think before I came to America, some kind of crusty thing developed, as it does with a lot of us. And the job in Voice Lesson is really to start peeling that back and find that honesty and allow for some lessons to be about crying. Because it's so vulnerable, and allow for students to grow in strength and to not be rigid and firm and good and I'm ready. No, singing has to happen in the flow of air and not afraid of the breath and losing the breath and releasing the breath. And, you know this because of the trumpet, but we don't even have an instrument that stops it or holds it. It's all about out,
Oh, yeah.
But
and
also
even the vulnerability of even saying specific words.
Yes.
And a story that is everyone. That's the one thing that I noticed the few times that I've sung is, I remember at Cal Arts where you also teach.
Yeah.
For my master's recital, I sang and played the bass for my recital. And it's the first time I'd ever done that in public. And it was one of the most scary things I've ever done. Yeah. And I wasn't singing like edgy material. It was songs that I've written about, whatever. But when I say the word blue, like, oh, you actually understand what blue means, at least your representation of what blue is, instead of me hiding behind that blue.
Painting.
And I have so much respect for singers.
But I love that about you, that you have put yourself in situations where you are, listen, someone like you could just write and play the trumpet and that's it, I'm done. I got this thing, I got it. And you could just coast on it and get on the boat and sail, right? And yet you jump in the water time and time again with the sharks and the dolphins and the little creatures and the pollution and the plastic bottles and the caps. You're in it. And every time you get comfortable, I'm sure you do this to you. You kind of push yourself out of the boat or crack a hole in the boat and get yourself under there. And singing does that, and playing the bass does that. For me, playing percussion does that. Having to feel like, not that I'm the timekeeper, but I for many years was singing and everybody else was doing, and then I'm like, no, I'm in it, and I want to just be part of the collective. And that idea of the samba school is so important in Brazilian music, right? You go to samba school, todo mundo vai na escola de samba. Everybody goes in the samba school. Everybody in Rio goes to samba school, and it's not a school. You don't get a degree, and there's no real teacher. Somebody just, here, play this, and you're given this instrument when you're age 4, 3, and you're there, and some of it is about the food and running around, and the child gets lost. Everybody goes find, okay, he's over there, bring him here, and you're given a ganzá or some simple thing, a shaker, right, of some kind, and you just go for hours, right? But if you're not there, there's no samba. And you need those 40 guys doing that in order to create the sound that another 40 people are playing this and 25 are playing surdos and the repinique and the pandeiro and the tamborim. The collective thing, right? So for me, I wanted to play the percussion in my bands so I could be in the band. So, okay, I'm not singing, but I'm still here. Danilo Perez was really important to me also. He gave me claves and just said, play, mama. And I'm like, oh, play what, in 11? Try to find a clave in 13. And so for me, it was the challenge, but also being in the spirit, the joking, the playful spirit of music. Once you give somebody a percussion instrument, it no longer is really about precision, right? It's an instrument that has beads or something inside. It's about the falling of this thing and the hitting and then the messiness of it, and then finding the groove and the feel and then the joy, and then doing it so much that you're no longer thinking. It's completely unconscious and you're just in the moment, in the music. And that I wanted for myself. So you playing the bass and singing and going to these spaces, now you're singing more, I hear, right? More and more and more.
Yes,
and recording
because
singing. And
it's the next frontier.
Yeah.
It's the next
but
thing
it's
to
so
develop.
connected to the trumpet. I find all the trumpet players I know are incredible singers, whether it's Clark Terry, Wynton sings, people who play the trumpet, all my friends sing well because you guys have to sing in the throat in order to make the sound.
Is that what it is?
It is. It's the connection
never
is so
realized that.
immediate, Right, because with the three vowels, you have to sing. You have to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's happening here.
I was, I started as a singer before I played trumpet. I mean, when I was 7, 8 years old.
Hopefully you did. Everyone
but
should.
that's how I learned to read music is just singing. And so when it came time to play trumpet, I knew what it was supposed to sound like with those different partials. So it was like, oh, okay. It was not just pushing down buttons. But that's fascinating.
But I love that you do, and I love that you're not just sitting on the thing and going, oh, I know that music is calling you to these different uncomfortable places, and sometimes places where there's tremendous failure. For me, when I want to play something at the piano in my gig, I want to walk out alone and play. Right? And so I work on that and I rehearse it and I practice. And I want it to become to that point where I'm not thinking anymore. So rehearse enough so you can go beyond, right? But don't rehearse so much that you're sick of it and stay on the edge of it. And then sometimes, even though I think I got this, and I go and I sit down and there's a mistake, and that mistake becomes the most beautiful, wonderful thing. That note that clashes with what you sang becomes that moment that allows you to feel the vulnerability and also embrace it, right?
Those are the best moments because you're listening.
Yes.
You're listening, but you're present.
Yeah.
You're not thinking in the past, and you're not thinking about in the future, which is anxiety and depression over here. You're actually here now, and so you're open to anything happening, but you've done the preparation to have something to stand on.
Right.
So you have skill and craft that you're ready to put in the trash at any moment.
Exactly.
So when you're playing in the concert hall and there's a squeak and you can actually make that moment, that's the only moment it'll ever be.
Right.
And
exactly.
It becomes the thing.
Yes. Yeah, and it becomes the thing that you can't search for. It's just a happenstance of it, right? It just happens.
To be open for it.
Yeah, but my evolution from fear, so from this crustiness that grew, and then I had to break it. So now, when you ask me the question, I'll go back to that question that you asked. What is it that I'm not looking for? But what is the purpose? What is the meaning? What is the thing? Is really to be able to keep the crack open. So I'm always looking for that honesty and trying to let it out and in a joyous way, in a most human way, the most human way I can. And that changes as I age, as I experience loss and suffering and joy and all these things. They come and go through my life every day. And living in a place that I don't know if I want to love this country. I chose to live here. I want to love America. I mean, in the United States of America. I want to love this place. And I have such problems with it right now, with the gun violence, with the hatred, with, it's always been here, but it's more right now. And we see it more. It comes to us all the moments of the day, another shooting, another this, another on our phones. So keeping away from that, right? Guarding myself, also protecting some of the innocence of my soul. I want to protect that so it can be confident.
Yes.
Because if you are also allowing everything in all the time, so creating some defense, and music is a defense. And being with musicians is that. It's really, a friend said the other day, Tana Alexa, who's married to Antonio Sanchez, she said something about the resistance. We are a resistance in a way. The people like us who are fighting for something that's genuine, that's unique, that's you. Only you can create this thing. Only I can create this. And it's not me, my ego, but this encounter right now, this conversation, it's only happening now. And that in many ways, this is a resistance to violence, to hatred, to negativity. We need to do this, not because we were chosen or anointed. No, it's we are like everybody else. But my life's choice, the choice I made in my life, makes me believe that it's important. What we do is very important. The fact that we are resisting succumbing to this low, dark thing. We are looking for light and channeling that. And as, again, corny or strange as that may sound, I feel that the mission is there. The mission to connect humanly, the humanity that you have with mine. That's what I look for in music. And it's not always there. It's not always possible.
Sure.
Some events that I do musically are much more about something else. And that's okay too. I need those. even to appreciate more the ones that are not like that. Sometimes it's all about the friendship and the music and the possibility of that. And sometimes it's about making the money and paying the bills. And, I accept that. I don't fight it.
It comes down to your awareness and consciousness of it, right? And knowing the why.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because, and I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And even raising, a consciousness of people within a certain region or country is a very it's a valued proposition. It's righteous. And the way that I think of, talk about corny, the way that I think about it is that if I can do the work to keep my frequency as high and just keep raising it, not necessarily high or low, but let's just say high, so that I can see everything, things below that are a slower vibration. Right. I can keep them at bay.
Yeah.
And if I can come down and meet folks sometimes, and they come down to meet me too, but if I can come down just enough to go, gotcha.
Yes,
and then we can go up together.
Absolutely.
And then it's like this entire collective consciousness that can start to rise together, like the cymatics, and keep going up.
The work that you do here, I mean the university, all of you, the work that we do when we teach jazz is truly, that. In a place like Florida, the way Florida is right now, it's so important to have a school like this with you guys here. Nurturing creative music, nurturing souls that hopefully some will stay, some will go elsewhere, but some will stay and penetrate this place, which needs it so badly. We it is a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility, and I take it not lightly. I take it. I want it. I want it. I want this.
Yeah, I see how you can't be as giving as you are and not be invested in something greater than yourself. That's what I see when you come in and work with our students.
Yeah, and it's been really a fantastic thing. It's been really, but also because it's set up in a certain way, the way Dr. Reed puts it together, the way Kate, shapes it, is really beautiful and generous and kind. So I'm just happy that we get to talk. I get to see you in the hallway a little bit, and you come in, and that we got to make music together. That for me is really the idea of playing music, playing like the joy we had when we rehearsed together. We were down on the other in Martin's room, and I remember I was late and nervous because I was like, when you feel bad that you're the Brazilian who's supposed to be late already.
You made me laugh with that. Yeah.
I'm supposed to listen. It comes with the territory, but then it was wrong on my schedule, and so I wanted to blame somebody else. But I was like, no, don't do that. Just say it was late, and it was late. It was late. I was late, but I come in and you guys are already dealing with the music and having fun and laughing.
Yeah.
That and Dafnis sitting on the drum set, and actually, I never really see him laughing much,
Dafnis Prieto and Martin Bejarano.
Yeah, and Dafnis was laughing so beautifully, and I was like, "Woo, we're gonna have such a great time."
He always brings so much joy into music, though. Yeah.
But I think I've only been with him once before that, and it was in his recording, so he was in that mode of having to, limited time. When we get in the studio, sometimes we're like
producer mode.
Yeah, and so he was doing that, and so I got a different side of him, and we weren't really. We are much closer now, thankfully, because we've experienced music together. But I think the trust was there, but it wasn't completely flowing. And then when he sat on the drums to play my music, he was, it was so gorgeous, and I just didn't want that to end.
That was really such a memorable and joyful experience for me, Luciana. It really was. And it came out of a time period for me where I hadn't been able to play for a number of weeks.
I know, because you were busy, right?
Yeah, and I hadn't been able to jump into music. And so the music that you brought and your spirit and all of the band coming together to do that was
so generous.
And I'll tell you a funny story about that after. It has nothing to do with anything, but we played, and I hadn't played for a while. I was feeling like, I used to be able to play the trumpet, I used to be able to do this. It feels squirrely, but whatever. Yeah. And then we played that night, and it's like,
you sounded gorgeous.
Thank you. I had a ball. But then I went on tour right after that, and I was playing. It's like, no, I've been playing a few days in a row now. I should this shouldn't feel so squirrely anymore. And then I realized, I think I need to clean my trumpet.
No, there was something in it.
My God.
Oh, no. Don't tell me.
I cleaned the thing out, and it's like a big, squirrel came out of there and said, "Hello, John. It's been 6 months.
I've been living here for a while." Yeah,
and it's a big metaphor for a liberation of the horn.
Absolutely. And how, like, caring for something like that.
Yeah.
Right? I've been telling the students here, they're going into summer soon, right? And I say, what's your project for summer? And then they were like, oh, I don't know. I'm going to move. I'm going to this, I'm going to that. And I told them, I said, I'm looking at my summer as a time when I'm not pressed to do certain things, like, okay, teach and travel, and, traveling, but in a different way. And I said, so I look at my summer, let's say I have 12 weeks, right? First week is just nothing, meaning don't schedule yourself. Just let it decompress. Just take those 7 days and enjoy. Eat later, sleep a little more, go see a friend, do something unexpected. Last week, the same thing. It's the preparation for what's going to come. So you need some time to go, whatever. If you're going back to school, you need to buy a new folder. You need to leave some space. Don't pack everything.
Yes.
But then the other weeks, you're going to have to work to make some money in the summer. You're going to have to, so save some time for that. And then just do some listening. And I told them, I said, go to John Daversa, go to Kate, go to Dafnis. Tell them a couple of records that you could be listening to. But listen really deep. Listen multiple times. Read about it. Just ask a couple of people that are really cool for some suggestions, maybe a book. John, what was the last great book you read? And that becomes one of your summer readings, and then you can read something for fun. So you're not studying, but you're also not abandoning this thing. So when you come back to the horn, there's a squirrel living in it. You know what I mean? Like when you come back to your voice, where's your voice?
Yeah.
Practice a little bit, sing a little bit, sing along, learn a couple of songs. Just learn them by listening. And they all were, oh, great. And I said, but make a plan about it. Don't just because then you look back and you go, oh, 3 months have gone by, I did nothing. Well, you can actually say you've done so. I listened to 2 records that John told me to, and then I read this book. And that builds your confidence, your soul confidence, because you fed the soul. That needs to be taken care of, needs to be tended to. It doesn't have to be a job, a chore, but just loving it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then all of those inspirations that come from those musics and the books.
Of course.
All of those you can apply to just every moment in your life.
Right.
And you're practicing
sometimes it's
all
not
the time.
direct, right? It comes from a movie that you see, right?
I'm practicing all the time. As I'm like, when you're talking about the wind, I was thinking about how yesterday I was walking and I wasn't listening to the wind, but I was feeling it touch my skin.
Right.
And I was playing it. It was I was imagining, okay, all is one, right? As above, so below. So we're all, I am the wind. The wind is inside of me as I breathe. The wind is out there.
Right.
So we're playing each other in this cycle. And then when you go to play music, what's different? Nothing.
Nothing. Same thing.
Absolutely nothing. But those inspirations come from the external, from the books, from the musics.
Yeah.
And then you bring it into your own filter and through your own heart.
Right.
And then it becomes your own embodiment and your own experience of it. And that's when it's real.
Yeah. And you said something about stopping, like your experience in Rio, to go back to the beginning of our conversation. There were 2 people and then a couple of hours went by and time stretched, right? Yeah. Just even thinking that way. This morning I had an experience with a student where we just sat down, right? And I said, let's sit in the edge of the chair. And I gave some instructions about feeling the feet and the knees and the pelvis and growing through and lengthening. And when do you do that? When do you actually observe the body, right? When do you stop and feel the wind, right? And just take a deep breath and just inhale that, the blowing of nature just coming to you, right? That this energy surrounding you. It's so rare that we do that. So stopping to do these things, that's something that's important to do in summertime, right? Because we go, fall through end of spring, right? And then nature is abundant and it's fertile, and enjoy that. Following nature, following these cycles is something really important. And we do less and less of that. So I think it needs to be prescribed in school. It needs to. At Berkeley, it was to be so cold in Boston that sometimes when the sun would come out in spring, we would take the classes. It were smaller classes, smaller school. When I was there in the 80s, we would take the classes outside. Okay, let's go outside and do year training today. And we would just, okay, nobody knows where A flat is. Who cares? Just sing. a note, pretend is A flat, and just sing this in A flat or something. But being outside, even in a place like Boston, was just such a gift.
I remember one of my first years here in Miami, like in September, I took my improv class. I thought I was going to be the cool teacher. And we went outside to to sing through some stuff, and they just like almost melted.
Yeah,
like,
there's that. Too hot, right?
Yeah, it's just
take me
really
back in where's air-conditioned air, right?
Yeah, but it's true. I know that for me, I found that I have to practice that. And, you know, most of the time I'm really good with this because if I don't, I self-destruct. When I get up in the morning, I get up really early and I do not work. And you're talking about the cell phones. I don't look at the phone. I don't look at the computer. I don't look at anything that has a screen on it that gives me information about the outside world because I am not prepared to handle the outside world yet.
Yeah.
You know, the news or everybody else's problems that I got to deal with later on in the day.
Yeah.
This time is for me, you know, and so I say an hour, you know, sometimes sometimes you go to the airport, whatever, you got 10 minutes and you make it 10 minutes.
Right.
But I split it up with taking care of my body in some way, do some sort of exercise and some sort of meditation so I can just clear and have that moment of connection.
Yeah.
And same at nighttime. And if I don't do that, I'm kind of a mess.
Yeah. Oh,
you know,
amen to that.
Yeah, I really can't handle because there's so, you know, as we get older, we have so many more responsibilities to handle, and everything's a little bit higher stakes.
Yes.
You know, so for me to have the capacity to handle all those things, I have to do that for myself.
And how it's cleaning the horn, right? Like taking a moment to clean the horn, to assemble it, to put the thing through, and whatever cloth you clean it with, right? To look at it and to take that moment. Same thing with voice. And that's why sometimes I come for very short lessons here for half hour. And even in that short period, I try to do a little warm-up, because the warm-up is the centering, right?
Yeah.
Is bringing you in touch with your body. So let's just
Grounding.
do lip trills. Okay, now where are you? How are you standing? What are you feeling today? What do you need to disconnect from? Right? Because we're bringing all these energies so we can be here together. And now, okay, let's sing. What's the song about? What's the tempo? And now we go into music. But just connecting to this body that carries us all day, all the time, through everything. Yeah. Right? For me, for 56 years, right, on this planet.
I had this thought not too long ago, maybe just a couple months ago. I was just doing some qigong stuff, and I was like, I don't want to do this, you know.
Right.
And I just thought, you know what? I have beat up this body for 50 years. I have treated it, you know, I've pushed it to the edge so many times for prolonged periods of time. And I'm and it just keeps on going for me. And I'm so grateful. So I'm going to do this for you.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
I'm going to start paying you back. And it has nothing to do with me. It's just like, I'm going to take care of you.
Right.
And that made me power through.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
just like gratitude. Because it never, you know, it gives me everything it possibly can.
Right. And it's what's making you make music and talk to me, right? I mean, all of it, right?
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's coming up next for you? What's the next dream to bring down to earth for us?
Well, I'm making music. I'm making music with different people. I have some projects coming up. I'm also writing.
Good.
This commission from Chamber Music America, I got a grant last year.
Oh, really?
It's due. I have to premiere in September 21st in New York City. So I'm writing it, and it's not... It's shaped and it's coming out, but it's still not complete. So I need to... This month of May is my month for staying home. I'm not traveling. I'm staying at home. And I'm writing right now from improvisation. So I'm just recording my own improvisations. I sit at the piano. I'm writing on the piano, but it's for guitar, bass, and percussion. And I'm playing percussion. So it's just this little trio that I have with Scott Colley and Chico Pinheiro. And
really?
Yeah, so just very simple chamber-like music.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is wordless. I think maybe 80% of it is wordless. So it's just melodies and, you know. And, if I can share, 24 little pieces. 24 short pieces. So the piece is about 30 minutes long, and they're about a minute and a half each.
Is Chico going to sing as well? Or is he just
No,
playing
just
guitar?
playing. I
Okay.
mean, so far, maybe, and now
Yeah.
you're giving me ideas, see? And Scott could sing too.
Oh, is that
But
right?
Scott is playing some percussion on the bass and,
okay.
of course, a lot of arco and maybe some extended things. I don't even know. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we'll prepare the bass a little bit. And Chico's definitely playing pedals and, some more atmospheric things, almost like strings at times. And I'm doing percussion and singing. And I'm singing all of them. So I'm definitely present as the voice of the piece. But they're all coming from improvisations. And usually I go different hours of the day. So wake up and go straight to the piano and just record a few things. And literally just letting the hands fall and seeing what shows up. Then I record, and if I love, I transcribe and then change and then, manipulate it a little. But it's all coming from what I'm calling intuition. Just allowing something to flow as opposed to looking for, just what is there and receiving it. And that's a different way for me to write. So I'm excited about that. And I'm very grateful that they gave me some money to do this,
I do an exercise compositionally where it's almost like a journal.
Okay.
And I'll just record improvisations with the intention of it becoming a composition, but little cells.
Yeah.
And that might be, if it was on the piano, it could be like
Right.
just a voicing, or it could be, a melody, a progression. But I have to stop the moment that my mind enters, the moment I start editing.
Right, and that's
And
why
do it
I'm
on
recording.
many different instruments.
Exactly. Oh, how great.
Yeah.
How great, yeah. I've written a lot of derivative things, right? So either from a poem or thinking about an idea or looking, like there's a lot of intention.
Yeah.
And what I'm loving about this, that it's exactly that.
The download.
Yeah, exactly. Just come in, what am I going to find? And not even looking for it, just going to it.
The beauty with that with my intention anyway, is that the download has nothing to do with me. It's just coming through me, and then it's a responsibility to take care of it now.
Oh, beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that process, because you said you're kind of clearing the deck so that you have time to write. And
Right.
do you find that you have to do it that way, or can you multitask and do the rest of your life while you're doing that?
But what's hard for me is when I'm traveling so much. I've been gone this year.
Yep.
Been to Brazil twice. I've been here twice. I've been to New York twice. I mean, it's a lot of traveling in 3.5 months for me. And I have a family, right? So it's not just me. My life isn't about me really at all. It's about my students and the places that I've committed to. I have all these kinds of responsibilities. And when my brain is too busy, I also don't want to write, because I want to use that time that I have, whether it's 20 minutes, an hour, to just be in silence. And if I'm always looking for, so sometimes it's about, I have to practice because I'm singing with someone or there's some activity happening. But I like the writing to come from a space that it's quieter. So not having to travel will allow me to be in the same space and not in airports or having to answer emails. I can carve out more time. Yeah. So a lot of the schools stop for me in early May, and so I can just be there. And then I have the pressure, I have this deadline. So, build it and they will come. Like I have to book the gig, and then I know that I have to finish. And I think it forces me to go quicker into this higher place and talk to myself in a way that's, come on, now you got to, you've been goofing around. Now you got to come up with
You are
the thing,
accountable. I can't wait to hear it.
Well, I'll show
well
it
as
to
everyone
you.
listening.
Yeah.
Yes, you had better.
You. Thank you for this lovely conversation and exchange, John. I appreciate
Luciana,
it.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's so good to get to know you a little bit better and hear, the inner parts of your heart. I appreciate how much you've courageously shared your heart with us.
Thank you. Likewise, I feel like we are brother and sister and
Yes, sister.
brothers and sisters, yes, together. Thank you.
I'll see you on the next gig.
Okay.
Much gratitude, everyone, for checking out the podcast. Please do subscribe and follow and like and add a comment, as it really helps us expand and grow and keep us all connected together. So I appreciate it very much, and I send you much, much, much love. I'll see you on the next one.